Should be going now.
How you think about your life.
All right.
How you think about your life. Get more out of life every day. Picture biting into a whole peeled orange. Not a timid bite, but a huge wide-mouthed bite. What if you lived your life like that? Living Life Juicy is what that life might be like. We explore how we can be present and kind as we do great things.
All right. Welcome to Living Life Juicy. This is John Losi, and this is a podcast where we explore how to be present and kind as we do great things. And this is really an excuse for me to do long format interviews with really interesting people across the board. Now, my other channels are about growing people and about leadership, professional development, all that kind of stuff. But this is my opportunity to live life juicy, be present and kind with people. And today, we're going to be talking with John Chin, who's the CEO of Engaging Virtual Meetings. And he comes out of we found that we had some connections. He was gracious enough to allow me to be on his live stream 2 weeks ago. And now I'm excited to ask him some questions and find some different ways. So let's get John into the room here with, Mr. Chin, we got John and John going here. I promise I won't be that formal usually, but I'm glad you're here. What's up you're in Spokane, right?
I'm in here in Seattle, Washington, and
Seattle.
I just thought I should play my own walk-in music. Ready? There we go. Okay, I feel
That's like waltzing music right there.
waltzing music. Seattle, Washington, up here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest.
Okay, that ain't bad. Now hot and humid down here in Southern California. Same thing up there.
Today is going to be 80. It's possibly going to be the 9th day over 90 degrees here in Seattle, which actually will break a new record. So global warming, it's not really a thing, John. But otherwise it's sunny and beautiful today. So happy.
Yeah. And here we are in front of our cameras.
I know.
Tell me this. And in fact, instead of me telling the group what you do, I'd love to hear, how do you describe what you do when somebody asks?
Do you mind if I do my short history? I'm going to do my last 2 years in 2 minutes. How about that?
Go for it.
Okay, let's see if I can do this right. All right. So I'm John Chen. I'm the CEO for Engaging Virtual Meetings. I wrote this little book, but what did I used to do? I was like John. I used to do team building. I actually used to do a lot of events with geocaching, a high-tech scavenger hunt. Then this little thing came and screwed everything up. And like John, I had 15 canceled events, but I looked in my history and it turns out I've been meeting online for 35 years. In fact, I even wrote a book called 50 Digital Team Building Games in 2011. And so, I don't make vaccines, but I can make your virtual meeting better. So I put a class on Eventbrite in 2020, gave it away for free, my intuition said, and 5,000 people took it, John. Right? My publisher came back and said, hey, you want to write your second book? I'm like, sure. I wrote my second weeks in 9 weeks because the funny part is the publisher didn't know how long coronavirus would last. Spoiler alert, still going on. Came out in October 2020, hit the #1 Amazon hot new release. And so to answer your question, what I do now is I design and produce as well as speak at and MC virtual meetings. These are some fun people that I've gotten a chance to work with. Elizabeth Gilbert, Eat, Love, Pray. I was the producer for Damon John. But now, John, too, I'm just going to give you the #1 tip for speaking at a virtual meeting. Are you ready? Okay, here's my #1 tip. I've worked really hard on this. So the tip is stand up, and the thing is that the last 4 famous people actually forgot that. So the last things I just want to share with you is, what did I do over my last 2 years? I built this thing. right? And so then the last part is that, and John is inspired too because I can't wait. I inspired him. He's got one of these installed. This is what's in front of my face right now, John. And this is now what, instead of being at a ropes course or doing some outdoor team building event, this is kind of what I'm looking at. Now, we got to see yours, right? You hooked up a new camera.
Okay. Well, actually, okay. So a little bit about all this stuff. I've been in the virtual world for quite a while too, and worked in a large corporate university that thought that they could save a bunch of money by going virtual, and they realized that it was really hard. So we made a whole bunch of mistakes and learned how to do it well through doing it poorly. And so when COVID hit, I'd been in virtual and used a bunch of platforms for a while, and had landed on Zoom after trying a bunch of the other ones and having lived with other ones for a while. So I already had in my background, I had a whole bunch of geeky gadgets as it was. And so I've got 3 screens here, but then, and this is the world headquarters, Into Wisdom World Headquarters, also known as the tough shed I built out in my backyard. So it looks like it's got the backdrop and all that kind of stuff. And it's really a pretty nice office. But I've also got the Into Wisdom Studios, which is actually like a green screen and everything in my garage. I've got 3 more screens. We have the same number of screens, just not in the same place.
That was kind of the story, John, of how I came to 6. I had 3 upstairs and 3 downstairs, and I had a dream one night going, what if I put all 6 into one place? Right? And then that's what showed up. And people go, what do you do with all those screens? And now I do have an assignment for every single one of them.
Yeah, and I landed on that too. But when I do the virtual programs and conferences and stuff, I end up having, just because I want backups. Yeah. So I'll end up having like probably, these 3 screens running off the main computer, and then I'll have 2 additional laptops up for other rooms. And then I'll have my iPad, and I ended up going out and getting a bunch of other iPads as well. And they would make fun of me that, like the wizard behind the curtain. I'm running all these things. And early on, I didn't have a bunch of trained facilitators and producers. So I was backing up everybody who was just figuring it out. Now I've got a great team of people who know what they're doing, oftentimes better than I do. But when it first started off, back in, middle of 2020, I'm the wizard behind the screen, and I've got all these other people that are actually making it happen. And it took a while before I felt confident enough not to have all 6 Zoom rooms open in the same place and managing echo and all that kind of stuff. Talking at one camera when you're really live in another one, that kind of stuff.
What I told people too, John, like in the last 20 years, that the phrase is technology is your new teammate, right? Because you and I do team building. And what I tell people is that you got to have your own relationship with technology, because you got to learn to build that trust, right? Because it can break quite often in the beginning. But once you have that trust, then yeah, you can do things like not have all that extra stuff, not have all the backups, or find another system where somebody else can do it. And then, so then you can get rid of half of the equipment. And I think that's kind of the efficiency. But I just thought that you'd enjoy that viewpoint, right? Your technology is another team person too, that you got to learn how to trust if you really want to work well with it.
Well, and when I'm training people on virtual stuff, or whether it's virtual facilitation, presentation, or production, I always say, something's going to go wrong. It always does. And it seems so traumatic in the tech side because we're not used to being here. Whereas if you were a presenter at a conference, stuff goes wrong all the time, but it's gone wrong so often that it's not wrong anymore. It's just part of what you go through. And we're not quite there. Many people aren't there yet with technology until you realize that, plan on something going wrong. My favorite example, I was doing a Robert's Rules of Order producing for a group. And, that really lively, formal, staunchy type thing. Well, we had it set up, and it was all set up. It was going great. We had multiple cameras in there. We had all the sound worked out, and the power went out. And power went out in the room, but because I had battery backup on everything, our side of it didn't go. And that allowed us to help the in-house AV people troubleshoot and get all the power back up for the room within 2 minutes. So we didn't lose anybody online. They were all there. We kept them engaged. And it's one of those things where, that happens in real life too. Power goes out. and you deal with it. And
Can I
I'm
share-
trying
can
to
I share
get
something with you, John?
Yeah.
All right, check this out. So I got to reach over here because I finally got an uninterrupted power supply too, right? And this is my post-it, right? This is my marker. My uninterrupted power supply. Come on, camera.
Oh, put your hand behind it.
There
There
it
it is.
My uninterrupted power supply has saved me from 10 reboots.
Yeah.
That's the value of that type of equipment and learning how to have it right. But my funniest one this week was I blew a fuse, right? Because I opened this with talking about hot weather. I was producing a program in 90-degree weather. It's the first time I've had all 4 computers. Every screen was lit up, every computer, because I was recording in multiple languages, right? And then I blew a fuse. Now, my power supply kept it up, but it also said it was overloaded because like all the laptops were also on the circuit too, and I didn't need to have them on there.
Yeah.
And I had to rewire my whole setup, so now my air conditioner is on a different circuit. And so this is the benefits of having a studio, which is like you can make these small improvements which can have a major impact. But they take time to discover. Like 2 years, I didn't discover that this fuse would blow at this level.
Yeah,
Right.
and you never, I mean, that stuff where if I'm consulting or giving people ideas and stuff like that, they're going to walk a different path. And one of the biggest mistakes in coaching or consulting is that I'm solving the problems I had when I was in your position. I'm not solving your problems. And that's, so yeah, you never knew that you were going to blow it out because the air conditioner, the computers were on the same thing. I'm like not fortunate enough. Oftentimes I'm like producing on site.
Yes.
And that's where I learned how to like, don't count on plugs, don't count on extension cords. It's great to have them, but I found these like, a couple hours worth of battery backup that I can plug almost anything into. Yeah. So it's one of those things. And this is where the whole living life juicy gets into it. If you don't put yourself in a place where that stuff can happen, then you don't do great things. And the way that you survive, that's where my catchphrase comes from. First of all, living life juicy comes from a really bad translation of the Christian New Testament Bible, which John 10 says, I've come that you might have life and live it to the full. And I said that second part, it's about living it juicy. And if you peel that orange up and you just take a big bite out of it, it's juicy, it tastes great, but it really is messy. And if we never allow our lives to get a little bit messy, live abundant and a little bit out of control, you never find out these things because you're always holding back, thinking, well, I can't plug that extra thing in, it'll blow a fuse or whatever. But you never know until you break it a little bit.
Yeah, let's break some stuff, right?
So tell me this. I know you gave the story about how you got to the engaging virtual meetings, but tell me a little bit about your origin story. Where did it start from? Because I know you went, you're doing geotabbing and team building through that.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about if you were the superhero, where's the origin story?
Well, I always loved one. I've been waiting every year to do it. I was a small boy born in the
Right.
No, I was born in Stockton, California. So Stockton, California, Central California, right? And it's 45 minutes near Sacramento. My dad was a doctor. My mom was a nurse. The funny part is I was like an honor student, and then my parents got divorced, and then I was a little bit of a rebel, right? A little bit pissed off, and so I got into punk rock and skateboarding. And I'm still in touch with some of my great friends. I actually taught all my friends to play music. So that's kind of
What's your instrument?
my login name in college was Fender, so I play a Fender Stratocaster.
Okay.
I made. And but I have played drums. I have played bass. I have been the lead singer. I once played, I think, accordion or something, right?
Okay, Weird Al.
I once put a banjo through a wah-wah pedal.
Okay.
And John, that's kind of the story, which is like, how do you use two things that aren't meant to go together to do something, right? I think a lot of team builders are like this, and this is like the resourcefulness of like, how do you take something crappy like a coronavirus and make something great out of it? You got to have the right view or vision, or take things that don't belong together until something works. And so let's see. So what else happened in there? So I actually took skateboarding. I got all the way to becoming sponsored. I went through college. And like my freshman year in college, I hitchhiked. I wouldn't normally advocate hitchhiking, but I didn't have a car, so I had to hitchhike a ride from Santa Barbara to San Diego or Oceanside. And my shop though gave me a check to like register for this because I wasn't really that rich off at that time. And I got into a contest, and 150 sponsored and amateur skateboarders, and some of them were yeah sponsored and amateurs, and I got sixth place.
Congratulations. That's great. And did you hang out down in Redondo with that group?
So if you've ever seen the movie Dogtown and Z-Boys about the radical group that took, Jan and Dean skateboarding and turned it into slashing surfing, I was two teams after that. So it was Santa Monica Airlines was the company that sponsored me. The owner was crazy, but he was revolutionary at his time, and he liked people who were different, and that's how I got in. And I think there's a piece of Being Juicy is like that willingness to be different when, there's a part of all of us that wants to belong. There's also a part of you that needs to stand out, to be unique, to be something like that. And so I did it through skateboarding till I blew my left knee. So then, and again, I feel like that story, John, where somebody tells you like, you got a beautiful horse, it showed up. Oh, that's great. And the guy goes, maybe. And then like the horse breaks its leg and he goes, that's terrible. And he goes, maybe. So in my case, right, that breaking my leg made me get serious about my academics, and I chose computer science, and I got into Microsoft. So I got a job at Microsoft. I shipped 10 products. I got 2 U.S. patents during my time at Microsoft. And then this thing to finish this last part. The origin story really starts with this piece of kryptonite, and it said, I always knew I was supposed to do something. I just don't know what it is. And I actually hung around Tony Robbins. I had gone through a bunch of programs that helped me through a time, and then I was helping others with that. So I actually had learned all the skills and techniques with Tony Robbins. One of the coaches on one of our groups came back and he goes, John, give me a weekend and I'll tell you exactly what it is. By the way, if you're a coach, you should keep that line because it worked, right? I went to Huntington Beach, and in 48 hours, I wrote the entire business plan for my company. And that's really where the superhero was born. 2.5 years later, I left Microsoft. Oh my gosh, John, too. And I can tell you this now. This year celebrates my 25th year of my company.
Congratulations. That's quite an accomplishment, especially with like a lot of people with the mindset you describe become serial entrepreneurs because that's how they stand out.
Yeah.
But to me, it's not about standing out. It's about the curiosity to go where you need to go. And that makes you stand out. If you're just looking to stand out, what'll happen is you'll end up everybody else with a Be Different t-shirt,
That's a great imagery. It did change though. The company went through 3 kind of names. It's Playtime Incorporated, right? Then it was Geo-teaming around that GPS piece. And now I have this company, Engaging Virtual Meetings, which really started during the pandemic. But it's still, it's amazing. It held true to what I called the 3 passions of the company. And that was technology and adventure to create human change. And so even like Engaging Virtual Meetings, that's technology, right? Mm-hmm. The adventure is this meeting or the unknown. Like, how do we become great doing stuff here on virtual, right? And then to create human change, where all of us are trying to adapt and be better and learn how to do this thing, not have Zoom fatigue, whatever it is. And it's still to this day, and has those 3 core passions. And that's what I love to tell people, John, is that sometimes entrepreneurship is your path to authenticity. And what I mean by that is that the one thing I'm most proud about, John, is I get to be me in this company every day. And I don't have to be somebody else, right, to please somebody else. I just get to be me and then figure out if people like that or not.
Well, I got to spend a decade in a large corporate university doing leadership and organizational development. And one of my mentors, a guy that I met as we were designing an enterprise-wide coaching solution for the organization. And later, like, okay, I get in there and I thought I was going inside corporate world to get some corporate experience to bring out to other groups. And I thought I was going to be in there like 6-7 years. I ended up at 9 years, and then they reorganized, and I could have stayed in there teaching people how to climb ladders and stuff, but that wasn't who I was. And it just made more sense to like allow myself to get laid off instead of some other people who'd spent 30 years within an organization, had never lived outside of it. Yeah. Well, afterwards, my mentor says, you know what? That was the best move you made. And he started saying, like, I knew I should have gotten out there probably 2 years before. And he said, you just don't belong in a large organization. You were doing well in there and it just didn't fit who you were. And my wife told me, like, a couple months after I left, she said, man, I've never seen you more you.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and it's not, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that go there, they wave the flag and they say, and almost make you feel guilty if you stay inside a large organization. And I don't feel that way. There's some people who belong there. There's some people
yes.
who have different values, you know?
Company needs people who want people who belong there, right? They got to have that if you're going to be successful.
And they're successful based on their own purpose and mission and all that kind of stuff. But man, if that's where you're at, great, because it can be a headache, not knowing where the next paycheck's going to come, or all the curveballs that you get, you know, like having a pandemic drop and all your schedule go away, you know, little things like that.
Little thing yeah, if you're in a company, at least they might have the bigger reserves than I do than to go through that. Although one of my friends, right, she did an entrepreneur stint and she's going back, and she would self-admittedly came back to that and said that it's not for me. It's not for everybody. Right, John? I mean, entrepreneurship, not, and you know, so that's the other part too. Like, you don't have to feel bad, right? If you've thought about doing something and you tried it as an entrepreneur and it didn't work, you know, that's fine. You know, you at least one is that you tried. You know, to the one thing is the entrepreneurs who never tried. They have this idea that's floating around and never, ever, ever at least tried. Right? I'd rather you have tried and failed than to not figure it out, because then you have the experience to go, this is specifically what I don't like about it.
And organizations, you know, that the watchword is innovation and all that kind of stuff, but organizations that don't have that spirit inside of them of trying stuff. I did some research on creativity and innovation, and one of the things that comes out, at least in the way that we researched it, is that oftentimes people use creativity and innovation interchangeably. And what we landed on was innovation is an organizational capacity. It's the way that you set up your culture. Creativity is an individual competency that we're born with and we lose. You need to rekindle it. You don't need to develop it. But innovation is that space within a company where creativity can abound and the best stuff can rise to the surface. And that's how we started doing an enterprise-wide innovation creativity. And the biggest thing was teaching leaders how to get the best thinking out of their people. And creating these spaces where people can rekindle and redevelop and reimagine their creativity, and giving leaders that facilitation skill of facilitating creativity is what creates that culture of innovation. So that was like an interesting aha moment, is how can we help differentiate innovation and creativity so that organizations can get it and people can build it.
Well, I'm actually teaching a class in Saudi Arabia, so John, I may have to ask you for these notes, because, you know, our version of creativity and innovation said this: creative was the ideas, right? But the innovation is the actual implementation of those ideas into something. And this company is a company that's in Saudi Arabia, and they like the largest milk producers. And, you know, I give them the example of the Egg McMuffin, right? Let me go back to my roots. Do you know what city the Egg McMuffin was developed in?
I'm going to guess Stockton.
Oh, no, very close. My other school, Goleta, which is the town right next to UC Santa Barbara.
Right.
You can actually, if you go to the Goleta McDonald's, they have a plaque and saying this is where the McDonald's Egg McMuffin. And if you go look, right, it's like 5 products, right? It's a muffin, it's an egg, it's Canadian bacon, and it's cheese. Oh, it's 4, right? And this is what I was trying to tell the people at this company, was saying, you make 3 or 4 of these products, right? Any one of you could have been the creator of Egg McMuffin if you just would have put it together, right? So, you know, go off. And so I bring other examples like that. Frappuccino is another one. The Swiffer is like another one. Right? These are all very small, simple things, but they are very creative and, most importantly, very innovative, creating, you know, billion-dollar results for companies if you do it right.
Yeah, and that's where the context is important. And when I talk about innovation, it's really about, it's got to be useful. I mean, creativity is great, but if it never touches the customer, creativity is still wonderful because it builds on stuff. Yeah. But innovation means it's got to rise to the level of impacting the customer. And in a business context, that's innovation. And again, most creativity is just banging stuff together that was never related. Are you do you? I'm not a big fan of OK Go, but I love their process. You know, OK Go, the band.
Oh yeah, I'm a fan.
Okay.
I love it.
Okay, and so they did a TED Talk one time, and they were asked basically the question, you know, how do you create your ideas? And they said, we don't create the ideas, we just find them. And if you look at their videos, what they tend to do is take a couple of weird things and get a room, and this is like they throw the bag over the wall. They hire a video production company, and so they're already have an expense there, and they just start playing with stuff, and that's how they come up with these concepts of all these videos. So for instance, they you know, the Vomit Comet, the thing that simulates zero gravity, the plane that goes up down a parabola.
Yeah.
They got that, and they got the film crew in there, and then they just put a bunch of stuff in there, and that's how they created one of their videos. Same thing, they started playing with. Yeah, this is one of them.
This is like what the original was on treadmill.
Yeah,
which is hilarious.
And dancing on the treadmills. But they have this one where they play with speed. It was almost like that Zoom activity that a lot of team builders do. And they basically show this entire sequence within a couple of seconds. And then the song that they put it to is all slowed down.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of work to do these things, because especially too, a lot of these things are one take.
Yeah.
That anybody screws up during this process, they got to do it over and over and over again.
Yeah. But so what they called it was sandboxing, or I don't know if that's what I called it. They basically created a sandbox, threw a bunch of toys in, and then intentionally made stuff up that worked.
So you'll love this too. So I went and reread Elizabeth Gilbert has a book. What's it called? Big Idea? It's something. So, and she was saying like ideas have this life. And she talked about that she got this amazing idea to do this book that was like in the Congo with this woman, blah, 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 right? And then she had to divert for 2 years. And because she had to like marry a guy, otherwise he was going to get deported, right? And it was her love of her life. So anyways, so they do this whole thing. And when she came back to the idea, she tried to write it and it died. It just like the whole idea died. And then a very good friend of her, who was also a high known author, later on came back and called her and said, I got this great idea for the book. It's about a woman in the Congo that does this thing, blah, blah, blah. And so the idea jumped from her to somebody else. So she really feels like ideas sometimes have a life of their own. They're looking for a host. If you don't pay attention with it, it's going to go somewhere else. Right. And so that for those, you know, like all of us have probably had one thing in our lifetime that would be a great idea. But if you didn't take action, it jumped to somebody else.
Yeah. I remember. OK, this is totally delusional. I know it. But when I was a little kid and I heard Barry Manilow's I Write the Songs, I thought I wrote that already. I deluded myself to think that was already out there. But we see it all the time where ideas spring up from different sources. There's like a zeitgeist for ideas, that spirit of the time that will make things emerge. And I think a lot of what's happened in virtual and hybrid programming and meetings, all that kind of stuff, I found stuff that I was thinking about and doing springing up at the same time all over the place, because I think we're in a time where minds that are willing to break things like yours and mine and willing to crash things together, things result. Yeah. You found this is they're playing with space and time, and it's really cool.
Yeah, this is really hard. Like, this is a flip book of him singing this song, right? It's ridiculous. And it's like, it takes him a second to do it, but when you slow it down like this, they actually got the speed to match up with his mouth. Yeah.
And so I mean, that to me is some pretty foundational stuff about if you want to have an innovative culture as a capacity of your organization, you've got to create these. Number one, you've got to create a safe space where failure isn't fatal. And you have to create the opportunity and a sandbox where people can exercise their creative skills and do it in the context of a group. I think it's so hard to be innovative alone. That's why I'm doing a lot of work trying to get entrepreneurs and small business people who are used to being alone, even like working with teachers, probably the loneliest profession you do in front of so many people. because you're doing your craft and you have your students and you're not necessarily connected with your fellow professionals. And so entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, all that kind of stuff, if we can create safe communities where these people can come together and get insights and get encouragement and support and really good feedback from other people. They're not running the same business, but they're in the same situation.
Totally agree. I just think that I want to go back to that one piece that you have, which is one of the things to teach managers, not only in facilitating, is I think you agree with Google's Aristotle research, which says high performing teams, the number one factor they need is psychological safety. And I went around the bend with psychological safety that it literally became like the number one or number two thing that I think virtual meetings have that a lot of people were not creating. I mean, all it takes is one manager to say that idea is stupid, and it will shut a whole group down, right? Based on position or power or whatever,
And you'll get a lot of this.
yeah, camera off here. Wait, where's my camera? I go, okay, I'll join you. Wait, and so creating psychological safety is something I'm super passionate about. I think it's the next place, right? I have this whole thing where I tell people you can make your next virtual meeting, right, amazing using no additional technology. And it mainly comes from the way that you run the meeting. And one of the things that's an advocate of that is how do you run this meeting in such a way that somebody else on the other side feels safe enough to take a risk, to contribute, to take a risk to interact with the meeting as opposed to attend passively.
Well, right? And I think that whole idea of psychological safety is crucial and misinterpreted, because what they're trying to do in psychological safety, they think it's about not taking risk. And it's about creating a place where risk doesn't happen. And so it's so safe that it's milquetoast and nothing happens. And I think this is where the adventure programming, team building stuff is crucial to know about, because we talk about comfort zones.
Yes.
And that and what we do when you have a really good facilitator, whether it's for meetings or for adventure guides, what they do is create a space where people you only exit your comfort zone or realize you exit the comfort zone from your rearview mirror. It's one of those things where you're outside your comfort zone and you look back and go, holy crap, how did I get there? And that's because the facilitator creates this space of trust and interaction where they feel okay stepping out. And when we're talking about meetings, first of all, I think if you're having bad virtual meetings, you probably had bad in-person meetings. But nobody would realize it. Nobody could say anything about it.
Well, yeah, that's what I had another friend, and because when I started studying Zoom fatigue, that was her key point, right? You were already having bad meetings, right? Just virtual just magnified its effect of how bad it was.
Well, and it made it easier for people to escape.
Yeah,
because when you can easily escape by turning off your camera, and that's why people you got to have we have a rule. It's if you get fired if you don't have a camera on, that's real safe. But then they realized that, the thing with one of the things with Zoom fatigue, there's this idea of a whole different set of nonverbals that you need to learn how to read. So for instance, if I'm doing this and it looks like I'm disengaged and doing my email, but it could be I'm actually taking notes, or I'm doing some research, I'm fact checking, I'm doing all that kind of stuff. So that body language could actually be more engaged than somebody who's just sitting there with the glazed look on their eyes.
I got to tell you, one of my very good friends from Hong Kong, right? His is this, right? And I said one day, I'm like, he's my friend, but this is my program. I'm like, hey, do you mind if I ask you what you're doing? He goes, oh, yeah. And he came up and he showed me this journal that he had, and he was doing mind mapping, and it was like all in colors, and it was like amazing. And so now I suddenly realize, if his head's down, that's actually really good. He's a self-described introvert, and he said that when my head's down like that, I'm processing and synthesizing what's happening or what you're working on in the meeting. And I that's the same thing that led me to that, which is, it's like this arm cross body language, right? A lot of body language people will tell you this is not necessarily bad, right? I don't know if you've heard of baselining. So what they said is this: maybe I'm just cold, right? Maybe my air conditioner is too low, right? You don't know. But the whole point is you should watch for when this happens. If I spend 90% of the meeting like this, and for some reason something happens and this happens, baseliners will say, watch that. If, what is somebody's 90% behavior, and when they change from that, that's when something changed with them. That's something you can explore.
Right. And that comes into like the observation skills of a facilitator. And that, yeah, this could be it. I mean, but that's kind of normal for them. And this, if you think it's happening and that they're bought out, whatever, you, instead of saying, hey, John, it looks like you're bought out there. What's going on? You can say, hey, John, I noticed during that section we were talking about engagement, your arms are crossed and you were leaning back in your chair. Can you tell me what's going on? That way it's observation, it's not interpretation. And they get a chance to say, oh no, I'm cold, or this is what I normally do. Yeah, and you have a chance to respond to that.
Yeah, I would even add mine. I said my interpretation is that you might be checked out, but I would, it's not what I think; it's what you think. And so, these are careful things that facilitators do to make sure that you never make anybody wrong, right? Like you got to come with this. We're going back to that mindset of curiosity, right? You really never really know what's going on. I love my previous coach who helped me form this company. He said the signal is always right, but your interpretation is always wrong. So watch for the signal, right? And this is what great, but then just check into it, right? And not put any meaning on it until you can figure out and get some more information from it.
Yeah, and it really doesn't matter what meaning I put on it.
No, it doesn't.
It's what the person does. And talking about signal reminds me of that whole signal and noise thing. How often do we pursue things that are the noise? Although we think it's the signal, we think that's the most crucial thing. But what's happening in the meeting or what happened with the group, that's really just noise that we're amplifying when we call it out.
So what's great about this is I got a chance to facilitate I thought it's probably one of the most difficult meetings I've had to facilitate virtually in the last 2 years. Two companies fighting with each other, they're not getting along, right? One owns the other company. There's just a lot of dynamics. And technical, I did a few things. One is I made sure and spent extra time, almost an hour before the meeting, making sure they knew what setup I wanted. So on the Taiwan side, I needed all the laptops on, but the disconnected audio, because they're in the same room.
Right.
And one mic. And the mic was actually really good. So and then I had people say hello from every seat just to make sure that we could understand them, especially with language differences, right? It's already hard enough, but if you're far away from a mic, it could be hard. And then the other group then all came in off of, I checked with them earlier that they had high bandwidth. And what it allowed was every single person could see, the group. So they could see those positional body languages, but more importantly, they could see their individual face like them. And all those things added up because these people too, they were all executives. So it's not like I have to teach them body language. They already know it. All I needed to do is make sure it was there for them to read. And that's, I think, one of the things that helped me be successful with it. Besides, I don't know, have you ever done Patrick Lencioni's exercise? Tell a challenging childhood story.
Yeah.
I'm amazed at Patrick Lencioni because you know what? I thought this thing was a bunch of hooey, but he said this was my number one exercise I do with almost every group. And I tested it over the last 2 years and it actually works.
Well, and this gets into like, even when I'm in person with executive teams and leadership teams, I don't do trust falls. That's saved for different sorts of things or whatever. If you want to develop trust in a leadership team, have them tell their stories. And so I do this thing called a game planning retreat, where it's where we really work out a lot of the high level stuff. I've adapted some of Lencioni's questions into that. I've used some processing things and some other, but in it throughout this weekend, our interactivity in this connection piece is all just 5 or 6 different times when they tell their stories. And then when they come back, the person who is listening relates that story to the whole group. And that will develop trust faster than any kind of exercise or manufactured thing, because what people need is they need to know the backstory of the people they're dealing with. I can totally, I'm convinced it's better if you like the people you work with, but even if you don't like the people you work with, if you understand where they're coming from, and you're all shooting at the same target, you can do great things. So, and it's about knowing the backstory of people.
Why do you think that works, though? Right? I totally agree with you, and I'm kind of sitting here with a question in my mind, going, Why does that work?
My thought around why it works,
Yeah.
and I could be totally wrong, which I always reserve the right to be. We do a pretty good job of filtering out the psychopaths. Okay. We do a good job of not hiring evil people. And so if you step in, one of the things is assume best intent. I cannot get along with you. We could have styles that clash, whatever you want to look at. But if I kind of know you a little bit more, it's hard to ascribe bad intent on people where you know where they're coming from. And I think the other key is it doesn't matter how good the story or backstory, if you're not shooting at the same target.
Yep.
Even if I like a person and get along with them, but we are at odds on direction, there'll be a low trust there. I love you and I think it's great, but I don't trust what you're doing because we're shooting at different targets.
Yep.
And even if you're a great shot, it won't matter because we're trying to hit different things. But I can look, if I assume you have good intent, I've heard your story, I know we're shooting at the same target. Now we can have a good discussion. Help me understand what you're trying to get. I know we're shooting at the same thing. That's why I think it works, is because it's that, again, we didn't hire psychopaths. We're all working towards the same thing. I just don't see through your eyes right now. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, well, I think it goes along, like some radical research. One of my good friends is Alani here in Seattle, is a diversity and inclusion consultant, and he wrote a book, and it said the book documented 10 people who used to be members of hate groups, and then they stopped. And he said all 10 of them had this one thing in common. They made a friend in the hate group from someone from the group they used to hate it. And so I think what you're telling me too, it goes back to what Peter Blocks, right? There's no work done without connectedness or relatedness. And I think if we do that, I'm with you too, right, John? I may not like agree with everything, but if I can respect where you came from, or more importantly, I know why John is in this, why he is this way, then at least I can justify it and then get along with my life and move on. And it's amazing how much value that understanding has for teens, right? You got to know each other, right? You got to know each other and what each other are really good at to get everybody in the right place and doing the right thing.
I worked with a leadership team one time. They'd been working together for a decade, and they still didn't know the names of spouses and children and stuff like that. And it was like, well, we're okay. This is work. Work is work and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, it's not like we're going on vacations together. But if I know a little bit about your background, I know what moves you outside of work, I know that your intentions are good, and sometimes things get in the way. Just because I don't know why you're doing something doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah.
But and the funny thing that happens when you step in going, I don't have to like my leadership team, but I have to know where they're coming from and that we're shooting at the same thing. Yes. What tends to happen is you end up having really, really positive relationships, dare I say friendships, for that time you're working together. It may not last past it, but you end up having wonderfully powerful, supportive, feedback giving interactions with this group who you didn't even want to like.
Okay, I want to merge to this, which is like, I think this might be the best team building movie of the year. Have you seen 13 Lives?
I've got an 8-year-old boy, so we're still working on Toy Story.
Okay, 13 Lives is on Amazon Prime, directed by Ron Howard, and it tells the story about 13 Thai kids. They were soccer players who got stuck in a cave. Right, this turned into an international story. Right, here's the team building part: 5,000 people worked together to get these 13 kids out.
Yeah. We may have a mutual friend. You know Tim Walter?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, that's what he's been doing. Before this movie even came out, he's been going down to actual caves or to convention centers and setting up the scenario that the group has.
No, what? Really?
Yeah.
Good.
It's awesome. I've seen footage of it, and we've talked about it a little bit. It's this real life scenario where life and death, and he does a great job of making people feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. Go see this, John. It is a great piece about teamwork too. And again, they had this high-end team, and you can see factions, right? These foreign divers come in, and then there's the Thai, Navy SEALs that are there, and obviously they're the locals. There's politics involved. There's so much stuff going on that represents corporate America and trying to make stuff happen.
Right.
And but the whole point, I think, goes back to your point, John, which is like in the end, everybody was aligned.
Yeah.
Everybody was aligned. They're saying we're doing it for the kids.
Yeah. Purpose and mission were like laser focused. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so we're coming up. We've got about maybe 15 minutes or so, and I wanted to ask some more what do we call evergreen questions, things that I like to ask a lot of people.
Okay.
And let's see, what are your like go-to habits that help you do what you do? So like maybe it's how you start the day, maybe it's something that you do every day, every week. What habits help to make you who you are?
Oh, geez. What habits? All right. Well, one of them, again, I'm not necessarily regular on like all of these, but one of the better habits I have right now for sure is, the morning, if it's a great morning, like this morning was great. I woke up this morning, I actually woke up early. I didn't have to get up early for a meeting. And so what I did was I put on headphones and I went for an amazing walk, right, in my neighborhood. It's so funny. I found a street that I've lived here for 15 years and I felt like I walked down the street for the first time. And it was so cool, like how small like discovery can be if you slow down, right? And so anyway, so I think that's one of the things. What's another practice? I mean, one of our practices by far is having a rehearsal. When we have a virtual meeting coming up and we have this rehearsal, John, one of the things that I discovered is that's where I'm using all my team building skills. A great virtual meeting, especially like a virtual production or a conference, is team building in disguise. You really have to know, everyone has to know their part, their roles, when to come in, right? All these other cues, and it's really helped. Like in one program, it was as big as 200 people were working together to make it feel inclusive or engaging for 1,200. So it was team building for that 200, and that 200 then made the 1,200 feel like a team. And I think those are something that I do. What else do I do? Now, every time I do get a chance to exercise, now I'm doing something else. I watch a lot of videos, John. I'm not gonna lie.
Imagine that.
I love YouTube. I love Netflix. I love Amazon Prime. I watch a lot of video. And the funny part is, I used to watch a lot of video before. It's not that it's any different. I used to love to watch director's cuts. Like in this 13 Lives, they showed the director cuts and they built underwater caves in a studio under a pool. And it was mind blowing, right? So they could have these camera angles of which we were realizing on there. I think about that all the time. That when I'm producing a virtual program, what's something that I can borrow? It's called Think Cinematically. What can I borrow from all these things that I've taken, from video and like find a way to represent it here to bring energy with that. And the last thing is that we have lunch or dinner all the time, especially when the weather's nice like this outside, right? So I do spend a lot of time in the studio, making things better. And I also try and balance that time, right, with outdoors and other things like that. And I find that's something that benefits me a lot.
Yeah. Have you found, like, this goes back to something said earlier, being music. Does music still play a role? Has it lowered a little bit? Where's it at?
No, music's even more important, John. So many people are not using music, right? And so I feel like I really specialize as a producer in music. I have an ASCAP license, meaning that I can play copyrighted music in a paid production. And the artists are getting the money, right? I'm happy to do that because these people make a lot of my life. I start and end every virtual meeting with a walk-in song. And people, you know what I love, John? People change the second they log into my meeting. They're like, don't expect music. And as soon as they get hit with music, right, they're like, that's awesome. How is he doing that? What's going on? So, I think music now already played a major role in my life. It's now playing an even bigger role. And on top of that, John, talk about mental health. We run a karaoke group every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We run a karaoke group, and I've got people from the Philippines and the UK and calling in, and we're singing karaoke together, things I could have never done in the regular world.
Yeah, that gets into, for me, now I have an adage that if walking into a room without music is like walking into a room without furniture. And that was true before virtual. And
I thought you'd say walk into a room without pants.
But the idea is that the room isn't complete without that sound. And Part of that is fed by my time with some like ex-Imagineers and stuff like that. In Disney, they talk about five sensing. And so when they make an attraction, they're thinking in terms of five senses. And when you think about like, Pirates of the Caribbean, you go in there and there's a feel, there's this musty feel and all that kind of stuff. Of course, there's the look and the sounds but they even have like the smell, but also you go by usually it's right by the restaurant.
Yeah.
Which has Cajun food smells coming out.
Yep.
And so they're thinking in terms of even I spent some time with some of their animators, and they are encouraged to five sense their office. And to think about that, what do you want to feel when you walk into my office? And it starts with like the outcome first, and then you manufacture all the different scents to get there. Now we're challenged a little bit in the virtual world, but we still can control several senses that we haven't thought about, music being one of them. So I really appreciate that move towards, hey, when you walk into the virtual room, being met with something that is both not expected, but also tuned into the outcomes that you want to get.
You know what? I love this. Have you ever been in was it Club 33?
Uh-huh.
Club 33 is a like secret Disney club in Anaheim, and it's got a room in there. And one of the things that's special inside that room is the original artwork from the Imagineers going to Africa before they did the Jungle Book.
Yeah, they've got all kinds of galleries, and when you get into Club 33, it's like an extension of their galleries, and they put like the really exclusive work in there. But again, it's that idea of if you want to create a real look and feel of something, don't just put your artists out there. But Imagineering was about putting all of the different people who would be involved. So there were, of course, graphic artists and animators, but also engineers and writers and publicists, and all the different departments were represented in Imagineering. So when they got a working group together, and it wasn't always like the artists weren't always the ones with the crazy ideas, and the engineers weren't always the conservative ones. So my dream role would be to be the Imagineer for hire for organizations to come in and not do the Imagineering, but get all the right people in the room so that the Imagineering process, this practical creativity comes to be, where it starts off with just wild and crazy stuff, but then comes down to actual built interventions product,
I have to share this since we're on the topic, right? So you talk about this, right? This is the studio. Here's some hidden features around the studio I haven't ever really showed anyone, right?
Exclusive. John Chin exclusive.
That's right. Number one is this, right? I can make a table. So like I'm putting food on this table, but here's the cool part about this table. It's also magnetic, but it's also a whiteboard.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So this is like some analog stuff and going, so I did this too. Now I built a second table over here. Sometimes there's a keyboard on it, right? But this is also a whiteboard here too. And so like, again, everything in the studio that's within reach has some kind of purpose inside of it. Like this here, I brought this desk in so I could have this sliding keyboard that can control this computer over here and then push these things out of the way. So, this is like my own version of Imagineers, is looking for what are all the little things that I need to solve a problem and then keep interpreting that. I think people gave up, right? John, like they turned their camera on and they got us like audio to work, and then they're like a car. They're like, I gave up. As opposed to
more, even worse than giving up is they thought that was enough.
Yeah, they thought that was enough. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I hope we challenge you. I hope you find something juicy in this podcast. John actually got inspired too last time we talked. I love it.
Yeah. The last thing I want to do is ask you this question. What is your besides your own, what favorite book or media do you like to give away, or what was the last one that you gave away?
Last book I gave away?
Yeah, book or media or something like that you gave to somebody, maybe who you're working with, or maybe it's a group. Do you have any standard things that you give away, especially when it comes to whether it's media or book or music or whatever?
This is so funny, man. Okay, fine. So, oh wait, hold on a second. Oh no. I got the wrong. I have it, and then I'm getting it. Okay, wait. Here we go. Let's see if I can get it right. You know, one of the things that we actually developed, and I'm super excited to give away. I'm trying not to sell here too, but I'm just trying to show you the picture of this. You know, I developed all these little items here that were really for the book. I have a conference and I have a toolkit that goes with it, and I'm excited that because it went through it was fun to go through this process of ideating product like this. So there's an on-air, off-air sign. You put this on your door, John, when it's on, when you know, and you can turn it off so people will try not to interrupt you. We actually, an Ethernet cable. Oh yeah, you've got one back there. I see it. You know, this is a whiteboard sign with a whiteboard pen. You can write any sign and hold it up to your screen, right? This is a mouse pad. So products like that is the last thing that I get excited to give that package because people, you know, it's a big lumpy envelope. And for those of you who are marketers out there, right, you still know the value of a big lumpy envelope, I think actually went up in the pandemic because it's a touchstone, right? It's a touchstone that says, I'm thinking about you and here's a bunch of stuff. And so I was really excited to actually go through those products. We looked at like 300 products that you could buy from the promotional people, and we figured out which ones could, you know, would make sense and actually add value to somebody's life.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to wrap it up here. And I want to thank you, John, for sitting down with me for an hour. And hopefully we went to some different places that you don't normally get to. But in the notes and whatever you're viewing this through, I put all John's connection information so you can track him down. He even, if you want to set up a time to chat with him, he's up for it. And this guy, I think there's been times when I've seen him go live like 3 or 4 times a day. So he's happy to do it. And he loves, I can tell that he loves to talk with people and explore new things. So with that, thank you all. Find out how you can be present and kind as you do great things. And we're out of here. Let me see if I can get us out of here.
He can do it. I know John can do it. Thanks.
I know. I just got to get to the right picture. There it is. I'm at the right picture now. Okay, let's get out of here. Right here. All right.
Get more out of life every day. Picture biting into a whole peeled orange. Not a timid bite, but a huge wide mouth bite. What if you lived your life like that? Living Life Juicy is what that life might be like. We explore how we can be present and kind as we do great things.